Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandy Plotin, Managing Director of CSUN Center on Disabilities, and I'd like to welcome you to the start of our Thursday program. Just a reminder about today's schedule. The block of general sessions will premiere at 9 a.m., and please check the specific times for the selected sessions that will be followed by live Q&A. Today, the exhibit hall is open from 1 to 7 p.m. Now it is my privilege to invite you to join this morning's featured presentation, Tech Accelerates Disability Resources in Disasters. On behalf of everyone at the conference, we hope you find today's content informative and enlightening. Now, please welcome last year's recipient of the Strachey Leadership Award, among many other things, Terry Hartman Squire, to lead off the presentation. Take it away, Terry.
Thank you so much, Sandy, and welcome everybody to the 36th annual gathering of the Cal State Northridge Accessibility and Disability Conference. It was an honor last year to receive the Strachey Award from my mentor and the founder of this conference, Dr. Harry Murphy. For 36 years ago, rolled the dice with Mr. Strachey to create this much needed and now even more needed annual CSUN Technology and Disability Conference, particularly during the last year as the world has pivoted from the physical space to the virtual space. It's the folks at the CSUN conference who made all of that possible and accessible and usable through the years. So in order to keep CSUN this year safe and the awesome conference that it is, with gatherings of technology and disability leaders, we're virtual like everybody else. So that way, CSUN remains an incubator and not a petri dish. So when the future of the pandemic is uncertain, it's technology that's going to help us through disasters and also through learnings and working and everything. So for too long, people with disabilities have been excluded, as you know, from schoolrooms and boardrooms and communities across the nation and around the world. And if people with disabilities were not excluded from the blueprint and design of technology so that it's accessible, this conference would not have existed. There wouldn't have been a need for it. And if people with disabilities were not excluded from emergency preparedness, disaster relief and recovery, and if they had efforts, the need for GADRA, the Global Alliance for Disaster Resource Acceleration, would not have needed to exist. But because people with disabilities have been excluded, and disability-led organizations and foundations have now come together to change all that. So today you'll meet some of them from the GADRA Founders Circle. And GADRA is more than an alliance, but it's a social justice disability movement to disrupt the traditional exclusion of preparedness, disaster relief, and disrupt that with radical inclusion. And I wanted to thank Sandy and the hardworking team at CSUN for making all of this possible. So in the next hour, less than an hour, we're going to hear from several speakers. I'll introduce them in a moment. They're all leaders in their own right. They've come together with GADRA as the Founders Circle. We're going to talk about some promising practices and how tech access accelerates disability resources in disasters. And the Q&A are ones that you have sent. Thank you for those of you that did. So GADRA is spearheaded by the World Institute on Disability for the Partnership for Inclusive Disaster Strategies and Inclusiva. And as we mentioned, it's more than an alliance. It's a social justice movement to disrupt the systemic inclusion of disability-led organizations from disaster resources and humanitarian relief. So the approach to radical inclusion is good for people with disabilities and the whole disaster impacted community, which, as you know, is all of us at any given time. So GADRA has joined forces to match corporate and foundation humanitarian relief initiative to accelerate the resources where and when they're needed most in the US and around the world by merging both a targeted response on a global level and a national level, in other words, a global level. So we all know you're here at CSUN because you also, like we do, truly believe that diversity, equality, and inclusion must include people with disabilities, and that's achieved with an unwavering commitment to accessibility, including technology access in all aspects of our changing climate, extreme weather, before, during, and after disasters like COVID, earthquakes, wildfires, floods, hurricanes, and power outages. So let's meet Team GADRA. Our first speaker is Marcy Roth. Marcy is the Executive Director and CEO of the World Institute on Disability, where she joined in September of 2019. And she brought her lifelong commitment to advancing the rights of people with disabilities and expanding disability leadership on a local, national, and global level. Marcy's been active in the independent living movement since 1982. Don't do the math. Marcy's been served as a senior and executive leadership and roles on national and global disability advocacy and public policy for a long time. She's established and supported leading coalitions that are committed to disability inclusion. And in the immediate aftermath of the 9/11 terrorist attack, she focused with pinpoint laser beam focus her advocacy on improving emergency preparedness and disaster outcomes for people with disabilities by developing accessible disability resilience communities. She was tapped by the Obama administration to create the Office of Disability Integration and Coordination, which had never been done before. And she took that experience with her after the Obama administration to create the Partnership for Inclusive Disaster Strategies. So Marcy, Marcy, welcome. Our next person here, presenter, is Tina Marie Duff. Tina Marie is the Global People and Business Resource Group lead for DAWN, which is their employee resource group, and DAWN stands for Differently Abled Workplace Network. She is a New York native now living in New Jersey. So live from New Jersey, Tina Marie has worked with Bristol Myers Squibb for 20 years, holding various leadership roles. And as I mentioned, she's the current lead of the Global DAWN, People and Business Resource Groups. Her mission is to foster an environment and workplace culture that promotes the value of individuals with disabilities on the contributions to the company mission of helping patients, people, clients prevail over serious diseases and illnesses and that persistence and to thrive. So DAWN now has more than 2,300 members in 22 chapters around the world. 2 of them have already activated this GADRA strategy in Colombia and Puerto Rico, and Tina Marie will report on that. So hopefully your employee resource groups can respond to this call to action. Tina Marie is also a board member of All Wheels Up. It's a global organization conducting research and advocating for wheelchair access spots on commercial aircraft. And even though not a lot of people are flying, the effort and the need still exists for that. Our last person, last but not least, is Steve Ewell, Executive Director of the Consumer Technology Foundation Association, which is a charitable foundation with the mission of linking seniors and people with disabilities with technology to enhance their lives and increase their productivity. They support programs providing interdependence, purpose, and vital connections for people across the US. Prior to joining the CTA Foundation, he served in other nonprofit leadership roles. For example, he was the managing director of InfraGard National Members Alliance, a public and private partnership with the FBI focused on promoting and developing critical infrastructure protection with 86 chapters and more than over 40,000 members. While at the Business Executives for National Security, or BENS, Steve served as a director of the Metro Washington, D.C. region, where he built the membership in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia into the largest and most active region, the organization, through a wide variety of policy engagement and programs. He's currently serving on the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine on advisory councils for the Center for Inclusive Design and Engineering and the University of Colorado, and enhancing neurocognitive health abilities, networks, and community engagement at Rail Cornell. So let's move to the panel. Marcy, would you start us off with an overview of GADRA, please?
Sure.
And the World Institute on Disability. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be a part of CSUN this year. It just occurred to me that that was the first conference and plane ticket that I canceled last year. So it's great to still be here and to be with you all. Very briefly, the World Institute on Disability is a global organization that was founded by people with disabilities and has been continually led by people with disabilities since 1983. We focus on the rights and opportunities for over 1 billion people globally. Among our many efforts, we established this past year the Global Alliance for Disaster Resource Acceleration, also known as GADRA, and we launched GADRA because of a long-standing awareness that local disability-led organizations are never at the table during humanitarian relief during and after disasters. And it became very clear to us that many of our corporate and foundation partners wanted to be more targeted in how their humanitarian efforts were being provided. And there are many very generous organizations that want very much to make sure that the resources that they can provide make it to those local organizations doing the work on the ground. So GADRA was established to connect those disability-led organizations with corporate and foundation resources. Certainly, we're focusing on COVID, but we've had a number of co-occurring disasters this past year. There was an earthquake in Puerto Rico, many hurricanes, including the impact of Hurricane Iota in South and Central America. And even just a couple of weeks ago, the extreme weather in Texas. And so in starting the Global Alliance for Disaster Resource Acceleration, we brought together thought leaders from across the globe, and we've had a series of town hall discussions. Our most recent town hall discussion was focusing on the experiences of Black disabled people during and after disasters. We've focused on a number of other key topics, and we've brought young leaders together. But we started by, and let me say, we've had folks participating from 69 countries and 6 continents. We are doing our darndest to get some involvement from Antarctica, but 6 continents and 69 countries, not bad since we launched in July. Early in our first meetings, we asked some key questions of folks because we didn't want to make the assumption about what those local disability-led organizations needed. And so in May, before we launched GADRA, we brought folks together and we asked whether or not disability-led organizations had the resources that they need to serve their local communities. And 98% said that they do not, or only sometimes do they have what they need. We asked, do you believe that disability-led organizations are left out of traditional disaster relief funding? 100% agreed that they were definitely or sometimes left out. They all felt it would be useful, or 96% felt it would be useful to continue participating in discussions around this, and 93% said that they would like to be part of an alliance. So we also asked them, what are the resources that you need in disasters? And while it was no surprise that folks needed assistance, financial assistance, they also said they need disability equipment and services, training in preparedness, capacity building, bias, disability rights, human rights, personal protective equipment, personal care attendant services, technical assistance for remote work. That was a need more obvious this year than ever before, when organizations that had never worked remotely needed to continue and ramp up their efforts. Legal assistance and communication or equipment for remote work. So not only did they need technical assistance in how to work remotely, they also needed equipment. So this was a very interesting array of needs that got us started. And we then, as we identified that need, donated resources, disaster support and humanitarian relief, and gap filling. The solution was bringing disability-led organizations, disability inclusive corporations and foundations, joining forces, sharing unmet needs, matching available resources, and accelerating relief and solving problems. We brought folks together, and we have begun the process of matching partners who have an interest in supporting those local organizations. We've been optimizing the collaboration between disability organizations, our steering committee, our founders circle, and working to address those urgent priorities that are coming to the surface during disasters. And this could be disability equipment. Recently, it was in providing assistance for potable water and groceries in Texas. This can be working together between a local disability organization and the local employee resource group in that state, or in this case, in the territory in Puerto Rico. And, because we are at the beginning of this whole process, every disaster has provided an additional opportunity for us to configure the right kind of match based on those immediate urgent needs. And the Founders Circle has been at the heart of what we're doing. The Founders Circle has brought together a wonderful group of disability-led organizations, corporations, foundations, who share that commitment to disrupting the exclusion of disability-led organizations in disasters. And we are still welcoming Founders Circle members and would be happy to talk with folks who would like to be a part of a new and very efficient way of getting help and assistance to where it's needed most, when it's needed most. Here are our Founders Circle members as of March of 2021. And we expect that this, we're going to have to squeeze more logos in because we have folks excited about being involved. And finally, before we move on and hear more from our Founders Circle members, we are not just building this for COVID. This is not a COVID response. This is not a COVID-centric initiative. We are building a sustainable, rapid response system to disrupt exclusion and accelerate the radical inclusion of those local disability-led organizations during and after disasters. And a key element of this is optimizing the power of technology.
So welcome back. Steve, we'd love for you to provide a quick overview of the Consumer Technology Association Foundation. And we know that security and privacy are top of mind with technology, but you and the foundation have also made a commitment to accessible technology. And so could you brief us a little bit on that? Thank you.
Absolutely, Terry. And I'm so happy to be back at CSUN virtually this year and participating with the great group that we have on this panel today. As you mentioned before, the Consumer Technology Association Foundation is the charitable foundation affiliated with CTA. And we're focused on how technology can help older adults and people with disabilities. And it was really important for us to join GADRA and get involved in this area. As you mentioned, when you were sharing some of my bio, I've been involved in the resiliency and infrastructure space in other parts of my career. So I always love when I can bring together, that experience with the work that we're doing now in the disability and accessibility space. We are working on addressing a lot of really important issues by being involved with GADRA. It is such a critical issue to both older adults and people with disability. We've seen that recently with some of our grant recipients, whether from the California fires to the recent freeze, which impacted certainly our organizations that we support in Texas, but even groups as far away as Portland, Oregon are dealing with the impact from that freeze. So really looking at ways that technology can make a difference in the daily lives of the people we're trying to serve. We've also been involved the last few years with an organization called Call for Code, which we were engaged with through our partners at IBM. And they bring together open source developers to compete on solutions around the really big issues. And one of those is certainly climate change and resiliency. So we've been able to bring some of their winners, whether Project Ewell or Prometeo, or most recently Agrally, to be featured at CES and really call attention to the amazing innovations that are being developed to address the challenges of resiliency. Resiliency is a big area for us at CTA and at CES and CTA Foundation. We look at this as an opportunity to really call worldwide global attention to this issue. CES, we like to say, is the global stage for innovation. So it's a critical opportunity for us to really bring together leaders from around industry, but also bring together advocacy groups, have conversations with people working in the disability space with members of industry to really address some of these challenges. CTA actually partnered with the World Bank for the Global Tech Challenge, which we announced at CES 2020. And we were looking at three major issues, one of which was health, one is solutions for women, and then the third is resiliency. And we received over 1,000 entries from all over the world to address some of these challenges, and really excited to be able to highlight many of them at CES earlier this year in January. And then we also have a number of panels and activities that we do throughout CES that covered issues everywhere from infrastructure to VCs, and how are we investing in the new startups that can really address some of these challenges. One of the opportunities that I know Marcy and Terry both had the opportunity to participate with at CES this year is our annual roundtable. And that's an opportunity for us to bring together, we usually try to cap it at around 50 people or so, just because to have a conversation, once you get much bigger than that, it gets to be a little bit of a challenge. But we bring together members of industry with advocates. This year, obviously, we were able to do it digitally, much like we're doing here, instead of bringing everyone together in one room. I do miss being able to have snacks and drinks with everyone right after the conversation, but it's really an important opportunity to create the understanding, to create the partnerships, to highlight the innovations that are coming, understand what's working, what's not working. That's a very important piece of it as well. And this year we had a chance to hear from FCC Commissioner Jeffrey Starks. We had conversations around telework and AI and hearing technology and a number of other issues which are impacting our daily lives. And that will help drive us forward as far as looking at the types of technologies that can address these really important issues. We're excited to continue to advance our efforts and be involved with GADRA. So we're excited to be part of this conversation. So thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Steve. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate the commitment that you have to accessible technology and how important that is, because diversity is a business imperative and inclusion is a choice, and you're choosing to include accessible technology as your top business priorities. So Tina Marie, can you let us know about Dawn and Bristol Myers Squibb and some of the efforts that have been going on with GADRA in Puerto Rico, Colombia, et cetera?
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you.
Sure, and thank you. And Steve, it's amazing work and commitment that you and the organization, your foundation have. So thank you for all that you're doing over there. You so nicely shared with the group here in the audience that I do lead a global organization, people and business resource group that focuses on our disabled community. And, when you think about what that means that the needs that are in the US may differ from China and Japan and Korea and France and England and Ireland and all these countries and markets that we are in. But there is a lot of common areas where we all are aligning and we mirror up to what the corporate strategy is and the priorities of Bristol Myers Squibb. And I really do love working for a company that really has a priority on diversity inclusion and views diversity in a broad sense, including age and race and culture, gender identity, sexual orientation, abilities, disabilities, religion, social, economic, and the list goes on, thinking styles, right? And the company's even made a public statement that the Bristol Myers Squibb and Bristol Myers Squibb Foundation is investing a combined $300 million over the next 5 years to accelerate and expand health equity and diversity and inclusion efforts. And the work that the Dawn and the Dawn team does around the world focuses on three pillar areas: workforce, workplace, and marketplace. And at a very high level, what that looks like, it's both internal and external focus work, right? And for our workforce pillar, we're looking at efforts that actively attract, recruit, retain, and develop our talent with disabilities. And we're looking for efforts, including some significant advances in technology that help remove barriers for our employees with disabilities or those that are caregivers. Right? In the workplace, we are looking to position our company as an employer of choice by enhancing the work that we do with our community partners like GADRA. And where else, and I apologize for the dog, we're looking to elevate conversations around things that support health equity, increase our supplier diversity, and address disabilities, particularly stigma around mental health and other non-apparent disabilities. And also in the workplace, we're looking to deliver insights and innovative solutions that really meet the needs of our employees and our patients, that will lead to a sustainable business impact. And when you put all that into the context of the work that we've done with GADRA and with WID, I can share with you some very recent examples. And Terry and Marcy, mentioned them at the front of this conversation. We know that the disability community is often disproportionately impacted by disasters and sometimes very much left behind. So by having this relationship and this community, this network that GADRA has built, and this pairing of those that need and those that can assist and assist rapidly, when we saw the Hurricane Iota hit Colombia and the surrounding areas, we were quickly able to leverage our team in Colombia, our DAWN, and actually this was in combination with OLA, which is our Latino Organization of Latino Achievement, other employee resource group, and work with GADRA and other companies to immediately support those with disabilities in Colombia and in areas that were impacted by Hurricane Iota. And that took, and it was probably from info to action, it took about 8 days. And it was the first time we implemented this process. Well, when we were notified by the GADRA team about the need of our colleagues and our friends in Texas and Oklahoma that were hit with different natural disasters, within 17 hours, we were able to execute a response from our DAWN members and our BMS employees. And, that was that ability to execute that response was because of the preparation that we have been doing and the planning that we're doing locally, and the process that now we have implemented. And the need may change. It may be a financial need. It may be a resource need. It may be a technology need, right? So it's important for us to have that communication process from the bodies in Colombia back to GADRA, back to Bristol Myers Squibb and the DAWN and the Bristol Myers Foundation and the other organizations and companies that are partnering in this effort to really get what's critically needed in a quick manner that will best help. And what the beautiful thing about working at Bristol Myers Squibb is that we also have the BMS Foundation. And the Bristol Myers Foundation has agreed, announced, I believe in August of last year, has announced a new combined investment, as I mentioned, but also that the WID, the World Institute on Disability, is an organization that we recognize that helps fight health-related disparities. And to have an even greater impact, donations that our employees in the US and Puerto Rico make to WID receive a 2-to-1 match from the Bristol Myers Foundation. So it really enhances our efforts in this space. So I want to thank Terry and Marcy for the great work they're doing, and it really takes strong leaders to pull a global community together to execute and deliver responses like this that will, change the outcomes for many of us and our families and friends, and actually the next generation. So thanks, Marcy and Terry.
Thank you so much, Tina Marie. And we do have some questions, but let's stay on the importance of employee resource groups for a minute, because Bristol Myers Squibb has made a firm commitment with not only the Disability Employee Resource Group called DAWN, but you mentioned OLA, which is the Latinx Employee Resource Group of Bristol Myers Squibb. So Marcy, we're going to hold off on a question for a minute, but I'm curious, Marcy, as we move into phase 2 of GADRA, employee resource groups takes on a very important phase. And now that we did the proof of concept from the data that you showed with the information gathering at the town halls. We know there's a need. We've documented the need. We're building GADRA. So that was all phase 1 last year. Phase 2 is going to have some exciting developments, and including how technology accelerates disaster resources. So if you could speak to that for a second, but also the importance of employee resource groups building on what Tina Marie said, that would be great.
Yeah. Let me begin. This is Marcy speaking. Let me begin by thanking both Tina Marie and Steve, not only for making the time today to join us in this presentation, but your obvious leadership and partnership as we take this, emerging solution and move it from a potentially good idea into a great action. And as we have been evolving in this process, it's become clearer to us, because of our foundation and corporation partners, that there are some specific strategies that will make this a much more effective way of accelerating resources to disability-led organizations. And that is through the employee resource groups. Many companies have not only disability resource groups that are led by employees with disabilities, family members of people with disabilities, but many other employee resource groups, as Tina Marie was sharing, the Latinx resource group. We're working with another of our Founder Circle members, and they have a women's ERG, and they're interested in working with us. So later on this year, we will be hosting probably a workshop, maybe a summit, maybe a partnership with some of the leaders in the emergency resource group, business resource group. We look forward to bringing folks together from these employee resource groups to talk about how we optimize these community leaders and the expertise that they bring to their local communities, and how we can match them with the disability leaders in their community before, during, and after the next disaster.
Marcy, thank you so much. And that's so important. And we know that disability ERGs and all ERGs are very important function in any company across whatever sector you happen to be in. They are talent pipelines for potential employees with disabilities. They are focus groups for messaging to potential customers with disabilities. They are your R&D and to create accessible and usable products and services for your customers. And also, there's a role in terms of your company's corporate social responsibility in helping to guide and align what the values are in all of those different constituencies, particularly those constituencies that have been multiply marginalized. So we invite anybody here to connect with GADRA. This is a wonderful works in progress. And as you have brought wonderful ideas to CSUN over the years, 36 years, we hope that we can apply that to disasters, because everybody, wherever you are, aside from the pandemic, will at some point and sometime have to deal with this. So one of the questions that came up was, what are the most popular technology tools that people with disabilities have at their disposal to communicate with people during a disaster or emergency? And two-part question. How can we convince manufacturers to update these tools to make them universally accessible to every current disabled and non-disabled user? So Steve, do you have some insights on that from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think this is an opportunity where it's not just purely assistive technology, but really it's general technologies. I mean, it is, your phone like this that really can be probably one of the most critical pieces of connectivity during a disaster response and recovery because of the accessibility, whether you're on Android, iOS, other operating systems. Because of the accessibility built in there, it can be an opportunity to connect with others in need. It can also be used as a communication device by being able to type out messages and others for people that you're interacting with. Now, there are challenges. Obviously, things like, if the cell towers are down, that is a major challenge. But that's where some of the solutions like out of the call for code, they had one of the winners is a company called Project Ewell. And the interpreters are going to love me for the name of their product, the cluster duck, like the animal duck. But that is essentially a mesh network that when the cell towers are down, they can distribute these across the area and all of a sudden bring up the cell network. So looking at infrastructure solutions along those lines, certainly drones are an important piece for this, whether it is delivering emergency services to people in need that you can't reach easily over the ground, or even just surveying an area to figure out where people are and how to best reach them and deliver the services that they need. With regards to the second part of that question, I think I would encourage people to get involved with organizations like WID, like GADRA, because it's having conversations like what we're having today, meeting with leaders of industry like Tina Marie and others that are involved with GADRA. Those lead directly to the development of new technologies that are going to serve the needs of people in this space.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. Marcy, do you have anything to add to that, and maybe how technology accelerates disaster resources? Any examples from the past or projections in the future?
You bet. And piggybacking on what Steve was talking about, the CTA Foundation and WID have both worked with Call for Code, as Steve was talking about earlier. And the cluster duck is such a wonderful example. Just had to say that twice. It is such a wonderful example of an emerging technology that, not only for the more obvious use of technology when connectivity is a problem, but in Puerto Rico, for example, during Hurricane Maria, people who are deaf were unable to get information, partly because their devices were damaged, and partly because there wasn't enough strong connectivity for them to be able to use video relay. And so by working together, we can take some of the emerging technologies and look at whether either they are a good fit out of the box, if you will, or whether there are technology transfer opportunities that could be employed to take technology and use it for narrowing the gap in disasters for people who need accessible information, or getting people and resources into the same places. There is a sort of a never-ending opportunity to take a look at what's there, where the gaps are, who could be brought to the table to help close those gaps. As it stands right now, and sort of following up on that question that you were asking, Terry, I don't know that there is any place where that information becomes readily collected and available. that's something that WID is starting to address. And I think it's a huge opportunity for folks who are joining us today to work together to identify what's out there. And then, one of the things that WID does, one of the programs that WID operates is a very comprehensive global user testing program. So we have a database of hundreds of user testers with a variety of disabilities, a variety of functional needs, who can help companies to test their technology to make sure that, in fact, all users are able to utilize, whether it's, digital or products and services. And so the use of technology is such a vital piece of the continuing to close the gaps. And it's going to have to be a collective effort by business and industry, foundations and other humanitarian actors, and disability organizations, especially disability-led organizations, working together before, during, and after disasters and other crisis situations.
Thank you, Marcy. Thank you, Tina Marie. Thank you, Steve. The slide up there says connect with GADRA. GADRA has 4 working groups. We really welcome all you technologists, all you academicians to join us in developing programs in communications, our rapid response team, which technology is critical, and our matching. Thank you, everybody. Take care.